Leave my store, broke ape. The words didn't echo. They detonated. The luxury jewelry boutique, until that moment a shrine of polished silence and glass displays, convulsed under the force of one woman's rage. The manager, a tall blonde in a black suit, thrust her finger forward like a dagger, her voice slicing through the air sharp as cut crystal. Behind her, 3 junior staff froze, eyes darting, bodies locked like mannequins suddenly forced to breathe. Across the counter, the black woman in the cobalt blue blazer didn't flinch. No raised voice, no startled retreat. Just one palm lifted, steady, commanding, as if stopping not just an insult but a storm. For the customers who had paused mid-purchase, the scene was impossible to ignore. They had come to browse rings and pendants under soft golden light. Now they were witnesses to something uglier. Roar the moment dignity was dragged into the dirt by prejudice. The insult wasn't whispered. It wasn't hidden behind politeness. It was broadcast like policy, meant to humiliate in front of staff, clients, strangers. That was the point. The manager wanted the woman gone, erased, forgotten. But silence answered her. The woman in blue didn't shout back. She didn't defend herself. She stood there anchored, her gaze unwavering. She had seen this act before. At 22, she'd been turned away from a diamond counter in Atlanta with the same dismissive tone. This isn't for people like you. At 29, she'd walked into a luxury watch showroom in Paris and was told, "Security's for display only unless you stay too long." Each memory etched into her like invisible scars, now resurfacing under the fluorescent glow of her own store. And yet her calm was deliberate, her stillness louder than rage. Shoppers shifted. One young woman by the earring case whispered, "Did she just call her?" Her phone slid out, camera red dot blinking, capturing every second. Another customer exhaled a shocked laugh, muttering, "This is insane! In 2025? The staff behind the counter looked cornered, but none spoke. Fear wrapped their throats tighter than the pearls on display. The manager leaned closer, breath hot, words harsher. "I said leave. People like you don't belong in luxury." Her finger stabbed the air again, but this time the blue-suited woman's hand rose higher, meeting it. Not to block, not to strike, to declare without words. Enough. The boutique had changed. It was no longer a place of diamonds and velvet trays. It was a courtroom, and every breath was testimony. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to her, because in 5 minutes, the woman being told to leave would remind everyone whose name was carved into the foundation of this store. And when she did, silence would no longer protect the guilty. It would crown the powerful. She didn't move, not an inch. The manager's finger hovered inches from her face, trembling with fury. But the woman in blue simply let her hand fall back to her side, smooth as glass sliding into place. Around them, the boutique struggled to decide what it was, a luxury showroom or a stage for public humiliation. The chandeliers sparkled as if unaware of the ugliness blooming below. "I came here for a gift," the woman said evenly. Her voice didn't rise above conversation, but it carried like a low drum beat. Nothing more. The words should have been ordinary, yet in the silence, they landed heavier than diamonds. Behind the manager, one junior employee, a brunette barely in her 20s, shifted uncomfortably. Her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but stopped when her supervisor shot her a glance. The hierarchy was clear: silence or risk your job. So she looked down at the polished counter instead, hands clasped so tight her knuckles whitened. The manager sneered, mistaking restraint for weakness. "A gift? For who? Someone who believes you can afford what's in here." Her laugh was sharp, brittle. "Honey, save your window shopping for the mall." The woman in blue didn't blink. She let the insult hang in the air like smoke, toxic and revealing. Then she replied, soft but firm, "Run the name Carter." 3 syllables, simple, but they landed with the weight of history. The manager scoffed, refusing to type. "Nice try. We don't play pretend with frauds." She turned to her staff. "Don't serve her. Don't open a single case." At that moment, a customer near the back, a man in his 40s with a gold band on his finger, muttered, "She gave her name. What's the problem?" He wasn't shouting, but the sound traveled. Another shopper, phone raised discreetly, whispered, This is bias. I've seen this before. The boutique's perfect illusion was crumbling. The woman in blue stood steady. Years of boardrooms, hostile negotiations, and subtle insults had built her into someone who knew when silence was louder than rage. She remembered being 16, dressed in Sunday best, turned away from a hotel lobby with the words, "Guests only." That sting had stayed. And now, here it was again, different place, same script. But this time, she wasn't 16. She wasn't powerless. She exhaled once, slow. "All I asked," she said, voice even, "was to see the collection." The manager crossed her arms, smirking, "And all I said was no, security's coming." A ripple moved through the room. Phones angled higher. Customers exchanged glances. One of the juniors bit her lip, the weight of complicity pressing down. The woman in blue turned her head slightly, her gaze sweeping across the room, to the witnesses, to the staff, to the manager still clinging to power she didn't have. Then she said it again, almost like a promise. "Run, my name." The words weren't just instruction, they were a warning. And soon, the boutique would understand what ignoring them truly cost. The manager laughed short, sharp, and cruel. "You really think saying your name changes anything?" She sneered. "Sweetheart, names don't buy diamonds, money does, and I don't see it." Gasps rippled across the showroom. A teenage girl near the sapphire case mouthed, "Did she just say that?" to her mother. The mother nodded slowly, phone already raised, recording with shaking hands. The woman in blue didn't flinch. She let the manager's words hang, like a noose tightening around its speaker, not its target. One of the juniors finally found her voice, quiet, hesitant. "Ma'am, maybe we should just—" The manager cut her off with a glare so sharp it froze her mid-sentence. "Number, we don't reward liars. Let her call the cops if she wants to pretend." The insult wasn't just personal anymore. It was systemic, weaponized in front of staff who knew better but stayed silent, and customers who now had no choice but to see. The woman in blue placed both hands gently on the glass counter, calm, controlled. She spoke with a precision honed over decades. "I asked for service. You denied it. I asked you to check a name. You refused. Now you've escalated. Are you certain this is the choice you want to make?" Her tone was surgical, neither pleading nor angry, just a mirror, held up for everyone to see. The manager smirked, doubling down. "Absolutely. You don't belong here. Security's on the way, and when they arrive, you'll be escorted out like every other fraud who's tried to play dress-up in this store." The room stiffened. That word again, fraud, said loud enough for every witness to hear. A man in a tailored gray suit stepped forward from the back, frowning. "Excuse me," he said firmly. "You can't speak to a customer like that." "Oh." The manager shot him a venomous look. "Sir, please mind your own purchase." But the man didn't step back. Not when I'm watching open discrimination. The temperature shifted. Silence was no longer safe for the bystanders. The woman in blue tilted her head slightly, acknowledging him not with gratitude, but with recognition. A small spark in the crowd. A sign the tide was beginning to turn, and then impact. The manager lunged forward, snatching a velvet box from the woman's reach. The snap of the case shutting was louder than glass breaking. "Not for you," she spat, clutching it like a trophy. Gasps erupted. The teenage girl's phone shook as she whispered to her live stream. She just ripped it from her hands. She really did. Still, the woman in blue didn't react with rage. She simply straightened, eyes locking on the manager, her voice dropping into something heavier, colder. "That was theft. And slander. Logged. Witnessed." The manager waved a dismissive hand, but her fingers trembled just enough for the nearest junior to notice. And then the words that would seal the moment spilled from the manager's mouth, raw and careless. "Get her out. Now. I don't care how. She doesn't belong here." The boutique wasn't a showroom anymore. It was a trial, and every phone raised was a jury waiting for the verdict. The order hung in the air like a commandment. "Get her out. Now." But the woman in blue did not move. Two security guards stationed near the entrance hesitated. They weren't used to this kind of request, at least not when the customer was silent, composed, and clearly unafraid. Their eyes darted between the furious manager and the unflinching figure at the counter. The manager barked again, louder. "Do your job, remove her." That was when the woman in blue slid her phone from her blazer pocket. Not rushed, not panicked. Smooth, deliberate like pulling the final card in a game she already knew she'd won. She pressed one button. The line connected instantly. "Proceed," she said calmly. On the other end, a crisp voice answered, steady and professional. "Yes, ma'am. Initiating audit protocol. Store cameras synced. Incident logging live. Confirm?" "Confirmed," the woman replied. Her eyes never left the manager's face. "Document every word she said since I walked in." Gasps rippled again. A woman browsing bracelets whispered to her husband. "She has someone recording this? What is happening?" The manager's smirk faltered, but only for a heartbeat. She forced a laugh, brittle and defensive. "Oh, please. Calling a friend doesn't change anything. This is my store to run." The woman in blue tilted her head slightly, as if weighing the words, then spoke into the phone once more. "Note the statement. She believes this is her store." The crowd caught it. Whispers darted between displays. "Her store? Wait, what does that mean?" One of the juniors, the youngest, finally broke. Her voice cracked as she blurted out, "Ma'am, maybe we should just check the system." But the manager snapped, "Quiet." The words slapped across the room. The woman in blue didn't flinch. She stepped closer to the counter, voice low, deliberate. "You've called me a fraud. You've denied service. You've ordered me out. Now you've silenced your staff. All of it recorded, all of it irreversible." The manager's cheeks flushed red. "Security!" she shouted again, but the guards hadn't moved. One of them muttered under his breath, "Something's not right." The phone in the woman's hand buzzed once. The voice returned. "Protocol logged. Accessing ownership records now. Would you like them displayed to the staff?" The manager paled, though she tried to mask it with another scoff. "Ownership records? What is this? A stunt?" But the atmosphere had shifted. The silence in the boutique wasn't complicity anymore. It was anticipation. The woman in blue's gaze sharpened. She spoke clearly, for everyone to hear. "You're about to find out exactly whose store this is." The chandeliers overhead glimmered, but they weren't the brightest thing in the room anymore. The spotlight had moved on to her, and in that moment, power began to tilt. The store was no longer quiet. It buzzed with something more electric than the chandeliers above. Eyes, cameras, whispers, judgment. From the far end of the boutique, a young woman with curly hair lifted her phone high, red dot blinking. "I'm recording this," she said, half to herself, half to everyone. The words were a spark. 2 more customers followed, phones raised, catching the manager's scowl, the trembling juniors, and the black woman who stood unmoving at the center of it all. The manager spun toward them, voice sharp. "Put those down. This is a private business." But a man in his 40s shot back immediately, "Not when you just humiliated someone in public." The crowd murmured louder, the balance tipping. The youngest junior, the one who had flinched earlier, finally broke through her fear. She stepped forward from behind the counter, hands trembling but voice finding a spine. "She's right. Her name is in the system. I saw it this morning when I logged reservations. Carter, VIP flag." Her words hit the room like a gavel. The manager snapped her head around, fury blazing. "You're out of line!" But the damage was done. The truth had been spoken, and the witnesses had heard. The black woman in blue acknowledged the junior with a single nod. No smile, no words, just recognition, a silent thank you wrapped in authority. Another customer spoke up, a woman in a red coat near the bracelet display. "I watched her get denied service. I watched her name dismissed. This isn't policy, this is bias." The manager's face reddened, but not from confidence, from exposure. Her power, once absolute inside these walls, was leaking away, siphoned off by every phone lifted, every whisper growing louder, every staff member hesitating instead of obeying. One of the guards at the door leaned toward his partner, voice low but audible. "If this goes online, we're finished." The black woman placed her phone flat on the counter, speaker still open, assistant's voice steady in the background. "Logging continues. Witness statements noted." Her own voice followed, calm as ever. No shouting, no spectacle, just facts. That's how change comes. The customers caught it. Nods rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "She's not even raising her voice." Another added, "That's real power." The manager, cornered, tried again. "This is a circus. She's manipulating all of you." But her words were swallowed by the chorus of recording phone. And in that charged silence, the youngest junior spoke again, firmer this time. "You can't erase her twice. Not here. Not today." The boutique was no longer her stage. It belonged to the truth, and the crowd had become its amplifier. The silence snapped. The manager slammed the velvet box onto the counter so hard the glass beneath rattled. Her voice, shrill and jagged, carved through the boutique. "She is not a client. She is a con artist. And I will not allow this store to be played by some fraud in a cheap suit." Gasps tore through the room. The insult wasn't whispered anymore. It was screamed, performed, intentional. The woman in blue didn't move. Her hands stayed folded neatly on the glass counter. But her stillness was heavier now, like stone anchoring the room. A man near the ring display shook his head, muttering, "She hasn't even raised her voice once. And you're calling her a con artist?" His wife, phone lifted high, added, "Everyone here can see what's happening." The youngest junior's lips trembled, but she forced the words out. "She's telling the truth. Her name's in the system. Carter, VIP. I saw it." The manager spun, eyes blazing. "Enough! You're done here. You're finished in this store." Her fury turned back to the woman in blue, fingers stabbing the air like a weapon. "You don't belong here. You never will. Now walk out before I have you dragged out." That sentence hit harder than any slammed box. Phones shook as they recorded. Someone whispered, "She really said that?" Another voice answered, "And on camera, too." The woman in blue finally lifted her gaze. Calm, level, her voice low but cutting through every corner. "You just told the wrong woman she doesn't belong." The boutique shivered with the weight of those words. The manager scoffed, trying to mask the flicker of unease. "Threats won't save you. Security." She clapped her hands toward the guards, desperate for obedience. But the guards hesitated. Too many cameras, too many witnesses, too much risk. One of them muttered, "She hasn't done anything wrong." The crowd murmured louder. A customer in a gray overcoat spoke clearly now. "This is disgusting. She gave her name. She asked for service. You denied her. That's the only fraud here." The manager's face flushed crimson. "Shut up!" she snapped at the man, but her voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. And then the woman in blue spoke again, slower this time, each word deliberate. "I came here for service. You chose humiliation. You chose denial. And you chose an audience." Her calm was no longer silence. It was judgment. And everyone in the boutique knew the verdict was coming. The manager's voice cracked like glass. "Enough!" she shrieked, snatching the velvet box from the counter and yanking it behind her as if hiding evidence. "You're finished here. Guards, remove her. Now." The command was sharp, desperate. It rattled the chandeliers overhead and drew every gaze tighter onto the center of the boutique. The woman in blue stayed motionless. Her hands rested flat on the counter, steady as granite. But the crowd saw what had just happened, property snatched from her hands like she was a thief, not a client. The youngest junior gasped, whispering, "That's theft. She just stole it from her." Her voice trembled but carried, recorded on at least 4 phones pointed in her direction. One of the guards stepped forward, uneasy. His hand hovered in the air as if even he wasn't sure he wanted to obey. "Ma'am, should we?" "Yes," the manager barked, cutting him off. "Get her out. She's trespassing." The words burned hotter than any insult so far. Trespassing. In a store she had walked into with dignity. Name given. Request made. A man in a gray overcoat shook his head violently. "She's a customer. You can't just throw her out because of how she looks." His wife raised her phone higher. "We're all watching this." The woman in blue finally lifted her eyes. Calm, focused. Every word, every action. Log. Her phone buzzed faintly on the counter, assistant's voice slipping through. "Incident file updated. Time-stamped at 4:17 p.m. Theft of item recorded. Guard escalation noted." The crowd stiffened. Witnesses weren't just filming anymore, they were listening. The woman's quiet control was amplifying the injustice for all to see. But the manager doubled down, red-faced, fists clenched. "You don't get to stand here and play victim. You're nothing. And when security drags you out, everyone will see what a fraud you are." She jabbed a finger toward the guards again, almost pleading now. "Move her!" The guards shifted, but hesitation clung to their steps. The phones pointing at them glowed like spotlights, capturing their every twitch. And then the moment that shattered whatever illusion of professionalism remained. The manager lunged forward, snatched the woman's leather clutch from the counter, and hurled it toward the security desk. "Bag her things. She's done here." The sound of it hitting the floor cracked through the boutique like thunder. Gasps erupted from every corner. The teenage girl live streaming shrieked, "She just threw her purse! Oh my God, this is insane!" The woman in blue didn't move to retrieve it. She simply inhaled once, steady, and spoke with quiet authority. "Touch me again, and the only thing dragged out of this store will be your career." The crowd froze. The words weren't loud, but they carried the weight of truth. The chandeliers glittered above. The glass counters gleamed below. But in that moment, the store was no longer a showroom. It was a battlefield, and the woman in blue had just drawn the line. The purse still lay on the floor, leather bent, dignity thrown down with it. But the woman in blue didn't bend to pick it up. She didn't move at all. Instead, she pressed one button on her phone. The line reopened instantly. "Escalate," she said calmly. 2 syllables, but the shift was seismic. On the other end, her assistant's voice was razor-sharp. "Understood, ma'am. Protocol Omega now active. Internal audit linked. Corporate legal tapped in. Every second is being transcribed. Do you want the ownership files displayed live?" The woman's eyes never left the manager's. "Yes. Send them to the regional channel." Gasps spread through the boutique. People didn't know exactly what that meant, but the authority in her tone was undeniable. The manager laughed, brittle, desperate. "Oh, please. You think calling your little friend makes you important? This is my floor, my staff, my rules." The woman in blue tilted her head slightly. Her reply cut like glass. "Not your floor, not your staff, and certainly not your rules." The assistant's voice came through again, louder this time on speaker. "Verification complete. Carter ownership confirmed. Logging video evidence of employee misconduct. Regional director notified. ETA, 5 minutes." A ripple moved through the witnesses. Someone whispered, "Wait, did she just say ownership?" Another replied, "She owns this place?" The youngest junior stepped forward again, courage rising with every second. "I told you her name was in the system. Carter, VIP flag." She looked at the crowd now, voice steadier. "She's not lying." Phones zoomed in. Comments flooded live streams. One man muttered, "This is going viral tonight." The manager's composure cracked. Her voice rose, shrill, aimed not just at the woman but at everyone watching. "Don't you see? This is all an act. She's tricking you. She's just some nobody trying to scam her way into jewelry she can't afford." But the words didn't land. Not anymore. The crowd had shifted. They weren't buying excuses. The woman in blue finally moved slow, deliberate. She leaned forward, her voice dropping low but audible in every corner. "You've accused me of fraud. You've called me nothing. You've thrown my property, and you've tried to erase me in front of witnesses. What you didn't realize," she paused, letting silence stretch like a blade being drawn, "is that you just gave corporate the evidence they needed." The chandeliers glittered, phones glowed, and tension snapped taut. The guards froze where they stood. The juniors stared at their shoes. The manager's breath came faster, sharper, but she clung to her performance like a drowning woman to driftwood. "This is my store," she hissed again weakly. The woman in blue straightened, eyes cutting through her. "Number, it's mine." And for the first time that afternoon, the crowd erupted not in whispers, but in applause. The room stilled as if the chandeliers themselves had stopped swaying. Every eye turned toward the woman in blue. Every phone lifted higher. She didn't rush. She didn't shout. She simply bent down, retrieved her purse from the floor with quiet dignity, placed it back on the counter, and looked straight at the manager. "You keep saying this is your store," she said softly, "but let me educate you." The assistant's voice broke in over speakerphone, clear and steady. "Ownership confirmation. Carter Holdings Incorporated. Primary shareholder Alexis Carter. Position: Founder and Chief Executive Officer. Effective owner of this entire chain of jewelry boutiques." The words fell heavy, undeniable, reverberating through glass and marble like a bell tolling for the guilty. The crowd gasped. The teenage live streamer nearly dropped her phone. "She's the CEO. Oh my God, she owns the whole chain." The manager's face drained of color, her confidence evaporating in an instant. "Thursday, that's not possible," she stammered. "If you were who you claim, why dress like? Why come in here like this?" Alexis Carter stepped forward, her blazer catching the golden light, her presence now filling every corner of the boutique. "Because I test my stores. I test my people. I need to know if they treat every client with dignity, no matter how they look, no matter what they wear." Her eyes swept across the staff, pausing on the youngest junior who had spoken up. Alexis gave her a slight nod, an acknowledgement, a silent reward. Then her gaze snapped back to the manager. "And you?" Alexis continued, voice firm, unshakable. "Failed that test in every way that matters." The audience was no longer just customers. They were witnesses to justice. Applause rippled, then grew louder, echoing off the walls. The manager shook her head wildly, trying to reclaim control. You set me up! This isn't fair!" Alexis leaned closer, her tone sharpened into a blade. "Number, I gave you a chance, and you showed everyone exactly who you are." A man in the crowd clapped harder, calling out, "Say it louder! Let the world hear!" And Alexis did. She lifted her chin, her voice carrying like a gavel striking wood. "I am Alexis Carter, CEO, founder, owner of this store and every store in this chain. And today, you tried to erase me in my own house." The words hit harder than any insult hurled before. Phones caught every syllable, every gesture, every flicker of truth. The boutique was no longer a showroom, no longer a battlefield. It was her throne room, and the verdict had just been delivered. For one suspended moment, the boutique was silent. Then the dam broke. Applause crashed like a wave. Customers clapped. Some whistled, some shouted, their voices ricocheting off marble and glass. A chant started in the back. "CEO, CEO!" half mocking the manager, half crowning the woman in blue who had just revealed herself. The manager staggered back, pale, breath jagged. She tried to shout over the noise, "Quiet! This isn't official." But the words were swallowed by the sound of approval rolling through the store. Her voice, once dominant, was nothing more than static. The youngest junior nearly cried with relief. Her trembling hands finally unclenched. She looked at Alexis Carter as though seeing not just a boss, but a shield, a living answer to every quiet injustice she had endured while staying silent behind that counter. Her colleague beside her, older and more cautious, whispered, "We're finished. She's going to end us all." His eyes darted nervously between Alexis and the cameras, catching his every blink. The security guards, caught in the storm, stepped back from the center. One muttered to the other, "I'm not laying a hand on her. She signs the checks now." His partner nodded quickly, relief flickering across his face. Meanwhile, the customers weren't just spectators anymore, they were participants. Phones lifted higher, streams flooded with comments. "She owns it. Justice in real time. This is history." At the counter, Alexis didn't move for applause. She didn't smile. She simply stood with the weight of composure that had built empires. She let the noise fill the space that had once been used to humiliate her. The manager's knees buckled slightly. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. All her practiced commands, leave, fraud, trespassing, sounded hollow now, stripped of power. Alexis finally spoke, calm and controlled, her voice slicing clean through the clamor. "Silence doesn't save you anymore. Every witness here knows the truth. Every second has been logged, and every choice you made brought us to this moment." The crowd hushed again, drawn back under her gravity. The manager swallowed hard, whispering, I didn't know." Alexis's gaze didn't soften. You didn't care to know. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, but all eyes were fixed on her. The employees shifted, customers leaned forward, guards stepped aside. The hierarchy had been rewritten in an instant, and standing in the middle, Alexis Carter radiated the truth that had finally surfaced. She hadn't needed to raise her voice to dismantle the lies around her. The collapse was complete. The applause ebbed into a taut silence. Every phone raised, every gaze pinned to the woman in blue. She no longer had to prove anything. She only had to decide. Alexis Carter placed her phone back on the counter, voice firm, commanding, "Nia, confirm system access." Her assistant's voice came clear and precise over speaker. "Connected to Horizon server. Manager login, active. Do you want to proceed with termination?" Alexis looked straight at the trembling woman across from her. The manager's face was a storm-red blotches, sweat forming, lips parting, but no words escaping. "Yes," Alexis said evenly. "Terminate her access. Effective immediately." The assistant's response cut like a verdict. "Confirmed. Access revoked. Badge deactivated. System entry locked." A sharp buzz sounded from the tablet the manager clutched. The screen flashed red, then black. A small alert popped. "Unauthorized user." Gasps echoed. The juniors leaned over, wide-eyed. One whispered, "She's locked out. For real." The manager's chest heaved. She jabbed at the screen again, frantic. Nothing. Her authority had been switched off with a single command. Alexis stepped closer, her voice steady as steel. As of this moment, you are no longer manager of this store. You are no longer employed by this company, and you will never again represent this brand. The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. Each syllable landed with finality, clean and irreversible. The crowd erupted again. Phones shook as they caught every second. The teenage live streamer yelled into her mic, "She just fired her! On the spot! In her own store!" The manager's knees gave way slightly, one hand gripping the counter for balance. You can't just—" Alexis cut her off, sharper now. "You humiliated a client. You insulted her race. You stole her property. And you tried to erase her name. You didn't just break policy. You broke the very foundation of this business. And now the business has erased you." One of the guards muttered under his breath, "Damn," shaking his head. His partner folded his arms, nodding. The youngest junior exhaled, tears welling. Relief, justice, validation. She looked at Alexis as if she'd just witnessed the impossible. Someone powerful choosing truth over silence. The manager stammered, This is unfair. I built this store's sales. Alexis's hand rose, silencing her with nothing more than presence. You mistook numbers for worth. You mistook cruelty for control. But dignity is the only thing that matters in this brand, and you just proved you don't have it. The chandeliers gleamed above. The crowd leaned in, cameras burning. The verdict wasn't up for debate. It had been executed. The boutique was silent again, but not like before. This silence was heavier, charged, alive, carrying the weight of justice delivered. The manager slumped against the counter, her badge flashing red, her authority stripped in front of every witness. The juniors stood stiff, one relieved, one terrified, both knowing the hierarchy they'd hidden behind had just crumbled. The guards kept their distance, hands clasped behind their backs, suddenly deferential. And Alexis Carter, calm, unshaken, stood at the center, her presence unchallenged. She turned slowly, not just to the staff, but to the customers whose phones caught every second. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It cut clean, deliberate. I don't need to shout. I don't need to beg. Justice isn't noise, it's truth. And today, the truth stood on its own. Murmurs of agreement rippled. Someone clapped softly, then harder, and soon the boutique swelled with applause again. Alexis let it breathe for a moment, then lifted her hand. The room hushed instantly. She looked at the fired manager one last time, her tone measured, final. You thought you could erase me, but I don't need cameras to prove who I am. I am the cameras. I am the record. I am the result. The words landed like a gavel striking wood. Phones trembled as they recorded, comments exploding in real time across live streams. Then Alexis stepped back from the counter, collected her purse, and turned toward the exit. She walked with the kind of poise that didn't need armor, only certainty. Each step echoed across marble, a rhythm of victory. At the door, she paused, just once. Her voice carried back through the boutique. Remember this. Power doesn't scream, it doesn't shove. It stands, silent, unmoved, until the world sees what's real. And with that, she left not as a customer rejected, but as a CEO who had dismantled injustice with nothing more than composure and truth. The boutique didn't return to normal. It couldn't. The air still buzzed with the aftershock, the sense that something permanent had shifted. The customers filed out with their phones, ready to upload, ready to share. The story had already escaped these walls, racing into the world where millions would see it. And for every person who had ever been told, "You don't belong here," Alexis Carter had just given them the words, the proof, the vindication. Belonging isn't given. It's owned.